everyone. Welcome to Just Say It, the podcast by communicators for communicators. On this show, we have in-depth conversations with journalists, messaging experts, designers, marketers, leaders, and managers, and unpack their wisdom and experience. Each episode is designed for strategic communicators looking to level up and advance their careers. I'm your host, Rochelle Bedell. From marketing to communications, Amy Plunkett continually finds ways to share success stories for brands and customers in a way that inspires others to be part of brand efforts, all while tracking projects and ensuring on-time delivery. In 2016, Amy shifted focus from marketing to communications and centered her efforts on sourcing campaigns and storytelling programs to showcase executive perspectives, customer stories, and unique points of view. In recent months, due to changes at the company level, Amy's role has shifted again with a new focus on supporting her global communications team through a period of transition with trainings, networking events, and more. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. Today, we kind of have an interesting topic. We know that in all areas, but especially in communications, we're seeing a lot of people in the job market that are faced with uncertainty, with change, with ambiguity. We know we have layoffs and we have company cultures changing. What we'd like to really look at is how to handle uncertainty in these kinds of times. So sometimes the uncertainty is something that you choose, whether you choose to pivot because there's a shift in your values or what you want to be doing, or you're just looking for a new growth opportunity. And sometimes there's a shift that maybe isn't so planned. Sometimes you get laid off or something changes that makes the job less desirable for you, or you just kind of end up without a job. So that's kind of our goal for today, is to kind of talk about those different changes and how we manage them. So Amy, I wanted to start our conversation with your 2016 pivot. I think you were working in marketing at the time and you made this intentional change to pivot to communications. And I'd really like to look at what was it that inspired you to make the change? What were you looking for? And how did you go about making that pivot?
Looking back to 2016 and that pivot, it was a combination of intentional and unintentional, in that there were some changes happening at the company that automatically shifted investment levels. And at the time, I was working on our advertising team. And as one can imagine, advertising campaigns involve quite a bit of spend, right, to raise awareness of your organization in whichever shape that takes. So given a shift, that spend was lowered. And while in marketing, we realized that there was also a need for support for these campaigns that were taking off in global comms. And those were part of a program for kind of customer storytelling, but also targeted solution thought leadership campaigns, if you will. It was a great transition because it went from big campaigns with large spend to more concentrated campaigns with an emphasis on perhaps a particular message, yet still raising awareness about the company in a unique way. So the transition was almost seamless, but a gift also, even though sometimes these transitions may not feel like it's a gift at the time, because you're like, but what about? I really liked, etc. Jumping in, it became clear that this was something that had my name all over it. It was a learning opportunity for sure. If we're not learning and growing and stretching, it's okay if that's the role that you really want. You kind of want to check the boxes and go, but I love variety. So the ability to pivot into this role of doing thought leadership campaigns for a particular organization within the larger organization was a welcome change.
And tell me, what kind of challenges did you face as you switched from this marketing advertising to telling these larger campaigns? Like, those to me sound like two different skill sets, two different kinds of challenges. What stands out to you? What was the hardest part and how did you work through that?
The first thing that comes to mind here is that my audience got larger. You would think the opposite perhaps though, because you're thinking advertising, your audience is rather large and, across multiple audiences outside the company, inside the company. But with something that's a little bit more concentrated, my stakeholders expanded. And so it would oftentimes take a little bit longer to get to that point of view that we really wanted to share, yet in a creative way. One of the skill sets that I've found to be truly valuable, at least in my career for the many years that I've been in tech, has been an ability to bring others along for the ride, right? Influence your stakeholders where you need to influence them, but others you may need to educate them, explain to them really why you're doing what you're doing, right? So a lot of it is that it's really socializing, oftentimes getting buy-in, other times getting everyone to not only buy in, but agree that it's okay to take a risk and try something different and be unexpected. So those challenges were super fun, sometimes challenging and frustrating along the way, but ultimately there were stellar results to share with the broader team once we got to the end of one of the campaigns, for example.
So that's really interesting. I guess I would have never guessed that in a communications campaign, you would have more stakeholders to, I'm going to use the word corral, more stakeholders to corral than you would in an advertising campaign. I know that's something that I face in my job regularly. Probably not as big of a deal as in a large tech company like that. But for me, it's really figuring out who all needs to approve this before I can send it out, right? And oftentimes I don't have to corral people because it's more their initiative that I'm supporting, but really making sure that we have those approval pieces in place so that everybody's seen it, everybody's okay with it, everybody can, wordsmith what they need to, or just give their sign off on it before we send it out. Tell me, with your stakeholders, how did you get buy-in? Were you in one-on-one meetings? Were you in group meetings? Were you doing listening sessions? Like, what does that look like when you're trying to get buy-in in a large company like this?
Yes to all of them. So one, kind of backtrack a little bit when it comes to an advertising campaign and getting consensus to go with whatever the creative is, the messaging, et cetera. The group that you're going to work with are typically your corporate brand and marketing partners, right? But also agency partners. That group is smaller as we go now to the comms campaign that was in support of thought leadership for a particular solution, for example. There are a lot more stakeholders there in that you're working with a particular business group, you're working with your comms team, and you're also partnering with marketing. Marketing and comms may be in the same organization. They may be separate, yet very much in lockstep, because when you're doing a campaign from a comms perspective, that generally is awareness, right? Not your advertising type of awareness, which is raising awareness of the company brand itself, but awareness one step down. The company may be a leader in this particular space. Therefore, that's a comms initiative, right? Versus a brand awareness initiative. So you have a few more stakeholders left to right to work with and to bring on board. When we would start one of these campaigns, and it really depended on what we were going to base it on, many of the campaigns I worked on were research driven. So we would figure out what hypothesis it was that we wanted to solve for in doing global research, and then using that to inform the messages we might go out with right after that research is fielded. So bringing the right people along for, hey, is this the right statement that we would like to make as an organization? Bringing your research tool along to support it in the way of how you might formulate the questionnaire itself that will be fielded. And that alone, when you're doing that, you have folks from your stakeholder business group, you have folks from your broader comms organization, and you have partners too from your marketing organization all around a table kind of making that decision. Backing up a little bit from there, though, even just in determining what that statement is, what the hypothesis might be that we may be seeking to prove. We may not land on that before having one-on-ones, group sessions, and more one-on-ones, right? So you may work with folks that are deep in the organization to really get their take on what you are looking to solve for, and then to ultimately put out in the market to raise awareness. And you also want to be in concert with anything that might be happening in the marketing organization so that you're not going left and they're going right. And then also working with your business owners group so that you're not throwing them off for what their strategic initiatives are for the coming months. So it's a bit of orchestration that can take a bit of work, but with anything that you need to be really detail oriented with, like a program like this, just keeping track and being ready to pivot if you need to, right? You may decide that, hey, this is the perfect hypothesis. We should solve for this. And you go and have the conversations one-on-one with some of your esteemed engineers, for example, or someone who heads up a particular marketing organization, et cetera. And they're like, no, that's not going to work. Okay, back to the drawing board. So in our team, and then in partnership with agency partners that we would bring in, we'd go back and come up with a plan B and maybe a plan C. But ultimately, once you get that thing out the door, you can see the fruits of your labor, especially when you're able to go out with say your metrics and the results, right? This worked. It resonated. Here's how we can show that it did, right? So it's a full left to right initiative that is really fun to bring to life. It's a lot of work, but some of the coolest projects I've worked on have been these.
Which is why that stakeholder input is so valuable, because they can all see things from a different perspective. They all bring such a diverse view and perspective to the table because of the different areas that they're working in. So tell me, if we go back to your pivot, what did you do that made that pivot successful? How did you make it work for you?
Like I said, it was a pivot of necessity and choice at that time. But because it was super interesting to me, it was easy to make that pivot a success. One, it was the team that I was joining, really amazing group of people. Two, it was the subject matter, very interesting to me. And three, it was the variety. Those are things that are super important to me in staying engaged and feeling fulfilled in whatever role I'm in. Those are just really, really important to me.
It's actually really interesting. I was listening to a webinar the other day of 3 people who had made a career pivot in communications. One of the panelists talked about really doing a values exercise. And I think they spent a good amount of time going through this. So we're not talking about just, thinking about it for 5 minutes, but they spent sounded like weeks, maybe months, really identifying their values and what they wanted in a new position. It was really enlightening to me. And here's why. And I know it shouldn't have been enlightening. I get it. But in one of my recent branding classes, it was on personal branding, and there's all this focus on, what do you love to do, what's your passion, right? And that one's always really hard for me because I have a lot of different interests. I like doing a lot of different things, and so it's hard for me to say this is the one thing that my whole life is centered around and I will do it and be it and all of that. And listening to this panelist talk about her values, she identified 3 things that had nothing to do with the work that she was doing. And I thought, oh, that's so enlightening, because people ask me, what's your ideal job? And I'm like, I don't know, but I can identify 3 things that I want. Right. And it sounds like that's what you did, right? It has to be engaging. It has to be, what did you say? Opportunity for growth. Was that the other one?
It was people, variety, and just interesting, engaging work, right? Something that is different. Growth is important. Your ability to spread your wings and learn during your career, no matter which path you take, is super important. And that's how I feel like the passion stays alive, is that you have that opportunity to do new things. And another I would add, if I were to throw another value in, is the ability to be creative, which goes right along with taking risks and being supported in taking those risks. So if I had to pick one of those, to be perfectly honest, Rochelle, it would be the people. I would do pretty much any role within reason if it's with the right people. I've learned throughout the years, and I look back on the really cool roles I've had in marketing and even sales support years and years ago, it's the people. It's the people.
Yeah. And I love this way of looking at it with these values, right? Like really setting up, what are these 4 things? It's like when we were shopping for a new house, right? And we were like, our house has to have these 3 things. Other than that, we're fine, right? Everything else is fixable. Everything else is workable. And so when I looked at it that way with the values, I was like, yeah, right? Because I could go into data analytics. I could go internal comms. I could go more digital marketing. I could go social media management. All those things are interesting to me if it has these 3 or 4 things, right? Yeah, it was really eye-opening to me. So let's move on. I know recently you've experienced another change. And so, we just talked about the intentional change when you kind of look at, I kind of want to make a pivot. I want to do something different. Now let's talk about in those circumstances. And we know a lot of people are experiencing this right now with layoffs, where it's a change that is not intentional. It's one that's forced upon you, whether you do get laid off or the company culture just changes, you get a new boss. Tell us about your recent experience with the way that your position has changed and how you manage that.
One of the first things to consider here is that change is inevitable. It makes us all uncomfortable in many instances. Some people totally can flow with it. You may be uncomfortable for a little while. You may be uncomfortable for a longer period of time, but you have to choose how you're going to address it, right? And work with it. Let's say when reorganizations happen, and they do on the regular, right? Oftentimes it's based on strategic initiatives have shifted. And so the organization needs to do this, this, and this instead of that. Previously, that was done. You either lean into it and go, okay, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to try it, see how it works. Or you consider what your options are, right? The grass isn't always greener. I'm not saying don't look for something else. If you have a fire in your belly and you want to find something else and you know that this reorg is not for you, that's exactly what you need to do. I think in this instance, with our shift and the way the org was restructured a bit, things shifted so that I was more put in a place of being responsible for expanding learning opportunities for the team, which is pretty cool because we all want to enhance our skill sets, but oftentimes don't take the time to do it, or maybe aren't choosing the right things that would enhance that which you're doing now or that which you might want to do tomorrow. So individuals can do that, but also as a team, bringing it to the table. So it was a kind of fun challenge to start looking across the overall comms team and go, okay, well, we have folks in multiple disciplines. What are some of the programs that we can offer on a regular basis that would enhance their experience, right? There's two things, learning, but then also I wanted to throw in like morale boosting and employee experience activities, because given the time that we were all forced to go online, how do we keep people connected? It was really from that place where, we wanted to do some fun things. What does that look like? I think probably because the leadership team knows I'm the one who likes to always fire things up that are fun and engaging and maybe unexpected and like kind of the party planner, if you will. This was a natural transition and fit for me to pull some of these programs together for the team. Knowing what the climate was looking like, you see out there now anyway, a lot of organizations are offering programs on dealing with change. That was clear during the shutdown. A lot of organizations were trying to figure out how do we engage with our employees, but then better still, how do you deal with uncertainty and change in a market that's kind of squishy, if you will, one of my favorite words. So I found some experts in this space and brought them in for a couple of sessions with the team to really address change management. And also as communicators, it's not only change individually, but it's also prepping our team to help their internal clients or stakeholders, right? The different business groups that they support as internal and external comms pros to address change too, because there's thousands and thousands of employees at the company. How do you help the leadership teams that you support as a comms pro to do just that, navigate the change? So not only did I change, but brought the team along and offered some change management training along with some other programs too. We would bring some of the folks who are just naturally subject matter experts on the team to talk about goal setting even, or social media principles, just things that someone may inherently have as part of their strengths in skill sets, and do a lunch session or a coffee talk session and just bring folks together to learn in an informal way. But then also we offered more formalized training too, like I said, bringing in an expert around change management. So that's been a lot of fun and different. And again, back to earlier saying how much I really like variety. While change isn't always easy and maybe it wasn't exactly 100% what I thought I wanted to do, I'm enjoying doing it now, because once you do embrace that change, other opportunities come to you as well. You offer kindness, it comes back to you in spades. It's kind of the same. Embrace that kind of opportunity that you weren't really sure about, because it opens the door for other opportunities to land on your plate too, and enhance your skill set even further if that's something that's desirable. So embracing it and jumping in has given me some other cool projects in addition to these training programs. So I would say go for it and kind of be grateful, right? I think it's really hard in times of uncertainty, and especially as you were touching on, Rochelle, that it's hard for a lot of folks right now because organizations are reducing their workforce, and that's hard for folks who haven't gone through that before. So it's just like, let the door open, because some opportunity that may be presented to you, someone reaching out to you for a potential role, for those that are looking for a role, while it may not sound like the most exciting position, check it out, because they could be some really amazing team members for you that will help you broaden your experience more than you can ever imagine.
I'm curious, just to go back to what we were talking about before with your values. When you were faced with this decision, it was changing, it wasn't by choice. What was it about the role that made you say, okay, I'm going to stay here and roll with it and see how it turns out? How did it line up with your value system? What were you seeing? How did you weigh it?
One of the key values I have, the people that I work with, they weren't changing. Some of their roles were changing as well. They weren't changing. So I made a clear choice to just jump in because these folks are ones I enjoy and have always enjoyed working with and or for, and I wanted to continue that. So that was a conscious choice.
So tell me, what things have you done to make the uncertainty more manageable? So, you end up in this role that's not necessarily one that you would choose, but you made the decision to stay. Are there any practices or, I don't know, things that you do to help manage that uncertainty and ambiguity?
So it's a self-care thing, right? When you're feeling maybe a little bit stressed or uncertain and change is hard, like I've said for pretty much everyone, it's leaning into that. Okay, this may be a rough day, or gosh, didn't see that coming. I'm going to need to step away for a little bit and just being true to yourself, really being totally true to yourself and mark yourself out on your calendar for a half hour, go take a walk, do something that brings you back to center. Because I think that many of us allow ourselves to spin on the things that we can't control. So, how do you do less of that? I can't say, how do you not do that? Because I think we all do, but how do you do less of that? And I think it really goes to what I was saying, balance. And if there's something that you can't address, can't get resolution on, need a break from, there's nothing wrong with stepping away and getting some fresh air, taking a break, writing a few things down, stream of consciousness, and then being able to address it later and just park it. I think that that's key, really, in working through this.
And tell me, what do you do aside from a walk or things like that? You mentioned more balance in doing things for you outside of work. What kinds of things do you do outside of work that help you balance work and life?
Some of the things I do, I can't really do as much because I don't have an audience for it anymore. So, for example, I love to bake and I don't want all the baked goods in my home. So, I don't bake as much, but when I do, it's usually to take to the office, right? Not as many people are in the office anymore. So, that's one of the things that is self care, personal therapy for myself is baking. I'm also one that loves to craft. So, I might paint, I might do something fun with paper, I might crochet, I might watch a video on watercolors and try and paint a flower. Things like that bring me joy because that really flexes the right side of my brain and I need that. Those are a couple things that come to mind for sure. And of course, spend time with family, see if I can get my teenager to engage with me a little bit. Since he's at that age where he doesn't want to as much.
I love this so much because I feel like it's something that's really missing for me right now. It's a conscious choice, right? I'm working full time. I'm going to school in the evenings. It's a lot of homework. There's a lot of workload there. And it doesn't give me a lot of time for me, right? And for really choosing what I want to do. And I knew that going in, it's a 2.5 year choice that I made. But I am really looking forward to being able to say, like, I just want to paint tonight, right? I just want to do something for me that's not driven by homework deadlines and yeah, all of that. I think that's so key.
Yeah. But 10 minutes is something any of us can find, right? So knowing that you are also a photographer is grab your camera and go walk in your yard or in the neighborhood and take photos of whatever's blooming at the time, right? Or 10-minute stretch helps, right? We probably find ourselves parked in our chairs far more than we should, especially because we're either at home or we're in an office. And that's what you do. Make that conscious choice to get up and wander around. And if you're in an office, go visit someone, go say hello, or like I said, go for a quick walk and see something. I'm not practicing what I'm espousing here as much as I would like. I mean, I'm crafting. I'm crafting regularly because that's what's bringing me joy. But the getting up and getting outside. But I think we need it to dry out a little bit for that to happen.
Yeah, the weather sure is taking its toll on me. I can tell you that. When you're faced with these changes that are outside of your control, what has worked for you to find a new place or a new certainty in your area of work? I know at one point when we were discussing, you talked about how you really leveraged your network. That really helped you find new relationships and help you transition and things like that. I'm just curious what advice you have and how you've managed that.
Touching on network is key because without a network or people in a small group of folks that you know that even have a robust network, I feel like it's harder to tap into those opportunities. When people know you, know of you, they can advocate for you for whatever it is, right? Whether it is a new role or an informational interview to talk about a particular topic that's interesting to you. Say you wanted to learn more about watercolors. Okay, well, I know this instructor over here. Let me introduce you. That type of networking, even just for interests, not necessarily career moves, are equally valuable and important. Offering to help using your network, I feel it comes back just in amazing ways. I get great joy out of helping folks connect with others, landing jobs ultimately. I love helping people that way. So, using your network, building your network if you don't have one, ask people for their time. If you're looking for a role in comms or you're looking for a role in social media and you don't really know where to start, ask around. Someone knows someone and they would be happy to introduce you to have an informational conversation at the very least. It's not necessarily a hey, will you hire my friend? It's a would you share your knowledge with? People love talking about that which they're passionate about. If someone is passionate about social marketing or social media marketing, they're going to be happy to spend a half hour, have coffee, etc. I have a pretty robust network, having been in the industry quite some time. I don't hesitate to reach out, but I also proactively reach out to offer, not just to reach out to ask of someone. I like to reach out and offer. If I see someone was part of one of the reductions that say things that we've seen lately, a lot of companies, Meta, Google, et cetera, if I see a friend was impacted by that, I'm going to go ahead and reach out and say, hey, I know you're probably taking some time to just process this and decompress. If there's anything I can do, anyone in my network I can help you connect with, don't hesitate. It's a two-way street, so don't hesitate is really what it boils down to. Don't hesitate to reach out and offer. Don't hesitate to reach out and ask. I think it's crucial. And my next point is those that you know you would want to engage with again or work with again or work for, definitely stay in touch. It doesn't have to be super regularly, but just to drop them a note every once in a while on LinkedIn or on one of the other social channels that you may happen to be connected to them on, and just say hi. People are so busy they forget to do that, right? People don't pick up the phone and call anymore. You may get a text out of the blue from someone, but even picking up the phone and hearing a voice, that's kind of crazy concept these days, right?
I don't think I know how to make phone calls anymore.
I know.
Tell me, in an informational interview, do you have a recommendation of what kinds of questions to ask? How do you get the conversation going when you're talking to someone you don't know and it's maybe a new topic to you? What kind of questions do you ask?
I think first do a little bit of research if you can on that individual, right? Find out what the role that they're in, organizations they've been at. It's easy enough to do some of that right on LinkedIn. What is it that you're curious about in that which they do or have done? That's the genesis for coming up with the questions, right? What piques your curiosity about them or what they do or what they are doing or planning to? I like to just ask them to tell me a little bit about their journey, their path, how they got to where they currently are, maybe standout projects they worked on, favorite moments, memories. Let them just talk and ask a few questions, because even in a conversation like this, it just naturally flows. One question leads to the next, and it just hopefully is organic. But I don't think you need more than 3 questions in your notepad to be prepared for an informational conversation with someone that you want to learn more about. I would hope it would go organic, right?
Yeah, I think it's great advice. And I think doing a little bit of research really goes a long ways, because I think you can always ask the question of what's your journey. But when you know a little bit about their journey, I think it can make the information that you get from that conversation so much richer if you leave it at a generic level, which I think you can do too. But having done that background research I think brings it up a level. We're going to move right into our Just Say It questions. And these are the questions that we ask at the end of every interview. Our first one is, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self when you were just getting started in your career, what would it be?
The advice I would give my younger self is not to worry so much.
That's easy to say.
I know, harder to do. But if I look back at the younger me and the worry and even, dare I say, a little paranoia, especially around the potential for being laid off, that always tended to freak me out. If it happens, it's going to happen. You'll get through it. It's not the worst thing that's going to happen, right? But worry is something that kind of a waste of energy. And I feel like I've wasted a lot of energy in the worry zone. And I think part of it is coupled with the fact that my personality lends itself to being a bit of a control freak. And if it doesn't go the way I think it should, then I'm going to go into that space.
Yeah, that's very relatable to me as I'm very much a type A personality. I like to plan things out, know where they're going. And so your advice is also very relatable. And I think it's one of those pieces that's really important for mental health and well-being, in that we could spend a lot of time worrying about all kinds of different outcomes, but it really doesn't do us any good unless you use some of those concerns to plan for the future and then let it go, because there's nothing more you can do. You've done what you can and just live your life. All right, question number 2. What is one habit that you do daily that you would recommend to our listeners?
I'm going to give 2 because one is driven more by my teenage son, even though he's not as much of a communicator at this phase, but he's very much, if you are aware of the love languages, he's a affection seeker. So hug your loved ones. He reaches out on a regular, and I don't want to hug, Mom. I don't want to hug. That's his language for I want to hug. And he's 6'2". He's towering over me now. I cherish that. So hug it out. If there's someone in your life, hug it out. So that's a great habit. And then the other is what I touched on a little bit earlier: create in one way, shape, or form. It could be making the meal for your family. There's creativity in that. It could be painting or, doodling a little bit. I feel like there's just a release in doing something with my hands that brings things to center for me. And I think people don't realize that they are as creative as they think they are. You know what I mean? Many people are like, I'm not a creative. I'm not a creative. You are. Everyone is.
Yeah, we just all create in different spheres. You could be a programmer and your version of creativity is programming. I see it with my husband. He really enjoys right now gardening, but also woodworking. And he's a lawyer, but his release is just creating in this other sphere that may not be what we typically think of with creating, right? It's not artistic necessarily. It's not painting, it's sawing logs and making stuff out of them. So I think that's such great advice.
That's totally creative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great way to use that other side of our brain that we don't often get to use in a 9-to-5 office job. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your advice, your tips, your tricks for navigating uncertainty and change. Tell me, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I'm so glad you asked that, Rochelle. I was going to offer that. So I love to meet new people, and I am happy to have any conversations. If anyone is interested, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would be honored to provide additional advice if desired to anyone heading into a new role or even questioning if they're interested in marketing, comms, strategy. It's all there. It's all part of pretty much everything I've done, but I would really welcome the opportunity to chat with some of your listeners. And thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and for our listeners, Amy's been one of my mentors for at least a year now. I think it's probably been longer than that, and I highly recommend. She's just been a gem full of advice and support. And so, yes, absolutely reach out. It's Amy Sloniker Plunkett on LinkedIn, and we will provide her link in the show notes as well. Amy, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too.
We have additional resources and links in our show notes at justsayitcommunications.com. Transcripts are up on the website, and the video is up on YouTube. My team is Andrea Casas-Topete, Zara Momini, and Shinga Yoshimine. And my name is Rochelle Vidal. If you enjoyed this show, please like and share it, and don't forget to apply what you learn on the show. We hope you'll join us again soon for another conversation.